You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Hello, friends. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to my guest, Lisi Lopez. We talk about career change. Lisi comes from a family where a lot of people in the family go into the same line of work. And I think this might happen a lot more than I expected when I was a kid. I'm actually not sure I noticed this when I was younger for myself. It's something that I do see as an adult, though. There are families where a lot of people will go into medicine or law or accounting or a particular trade, or a family business or education or nonprofits. It's a thing that happens. I don't think it's all that uncommon. And there are also families where people do all different kind of things. But in Lisi's family, there was a family trend, and she followed the family path. But as it turned out, there was something inside of her that really wanted to do something different. In fact, she wanted it enough that she was working on her passion on the side anyway. And until the time came that she could finally make the switch to do this full times. And one of the things that I think you might find helpful or supportive or fun about this story is that a lot of the career change stories that I share are when there are shifts out of necessity. Something happens urgently that causes somebody to make a change, expected or of their own decision. But Lisi and her family were able to do this in a pretty organized way, which is a nice option to be sure. But also, when you find out what the family business is, it makes sense that they did this in a systematic and organized way. Hold on to that when you hear it, what this is about. All right, let's get to the conversation. Let's do it. Welcome to the Art of Imperfect Adulting. Lisi Lopez, are you ready for a fun chat?
I'm ready. Thank you for having me.
Yay! I start all of my conversations with the very same question. What part of the world do you call home?
I am from Miami, South
Very
Florida.
good. Yeah, we could have actually done this in person, but we didn't know that until today.
We didn't yet.
That's right. We're
Happy
not
coincidence.
exactly. We are experiencing the cold front, which means it's not mid 80s in December. It's going to last one day. All right.
Yep.
So, one more random warm up question, and I am interested in this because there could be a lot of answers. Thinking back to when you were a small child, did you like fairy tales and maybe fables? And if so, when I say that, what is the first fairy tale or story that pops into your mind?
Believe it or not, the first one that pops into my mind when you just asked me that question is actually the Harry Potter books
Oh, nice.
because my godfather, he lives in California, which is where the books first came out in the United States. So he kind of like already knew about it and sent me my first copy. I was super young. My mom had to help me read it.
Yeah.
And that was one that just like opened my mind to the possibility of storytelling and that whole world.
It really was a shift in like literature and children's literature. So I think I'm probably a little bit older than you, but you don't have to go back very far in time to a point where there wasn't really a lot for young readers that was not, there was primers to learn to read, and then there were adult stories, and there was
Right.
like a gap. And now we have this amazing thing. Harry Potter, I do credit as being, probably the first of those. But, Rick Riordan's series, Percy Jackson,
Yeah.
that was amazing. And the Harry Potter books were such a phenomenon that when you talk about your mom reading it, like I've got a bunch of kids of different ages, but yeah, there was a whole generation of kids who really wanted to be included in the experience. But they were big books with a lot of like invented words. And
Yeah.
there's definitely somebody in my family that like wanted to be included in all of the things, but was not ready to actually read the books on their own. So I've done plenty of reading out loud of the Harry Potter series and midnight book openings. It was a whole phenomenon. It's great. It's so
And
good.
it's
All
it's
right.
nice because it's kids' book, but also the adults, it's also an adult book, right?
Oh gosh. Well, and
It
the
taps into
kids,
both imaginations and it was a
yeah.
nice way to bring it all together.
And the kids the people who were kids. So if you were in elementary school, like third, fourth grade, having Harry Potter parties when the books were coming out and the movies were coming out, those people are now adults.
Right.
and fueling the
Guilty.
continuation. There you go, right? It's a whole cultural phenomenon. And there we go. Yeah, no, we have a costume box in our house that everybody is too big for, so I don't know why I can still keep the costumes. But there's a bunch of Harry Potter stuff in
Yeah.
there, the scarves
I
and
feel
the
like that has
capes
to be a
and
staple in most families' homes. Some
yeah.
Harry Potter merch.
Harry Potter merch, 100%, 100%. And it's a requirement that if you live in Florida where we do, the trip to the park to make that
Absolutely.
and to have
Yeah.
the buttered beer. What is the
Experience.
thing?
Yeah. The buttered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like it, but yeah, it was a whole
Too
experience.
sweet. Yeah.
It's a whole experience. All right. The conversation today is not actually about Harry Potter or theme parks, but we're going to talk about a professional shift. You are trained as an industrial engineer, but you shifted to writing. And I
Yes.
have lots of questions about this. Are you ready to talk about this shift?
Ready.
All right, let's do it. So here's my plan. I don't know if it's a good plan, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start in the middle, then I'm going to go to the backwards a little bit, and then I'm going to jump forward in the timeline. I don't know
All
if
right. Keep me on
I
my
don't know if that's
toes.
helpful to know, but that's how I did this. All right.
Okay.
How long did you work as an industrial engineer?
So right out of college, I worked, and then I worked through having my daughter and my second son. And when I found out I was pregnant with my third son, um, he's 5 now, so for sure over 10 years I worked. I
You're doing
mean,
it's like
it
it's a
shifted. It was full time and then part time and then like part time and then like as a consultant and then
all
whenever I
right.
could and it just
And
so
then a
a good
decade.
amount at least. Yeah.
A decade. All right. There we go. I love how you were doing the mental math, like trying to talk and do the math at the same time, which is hard to do. Very hard to do. Okay.
My
So, some people who are in the audience are going to know this. I am not totally sure about the answer. I could have Googled it, but I decided to just ask it in the conversation. What does an industrial engineer do?
if I had to pick one word, it would be efficiency. So it drives my
Efficiency.
family crazy because it's all about what you can apply it to anything. You can apply it to a hospital, you can apply it to a restaurant, you can apply it to a production facility. It's just having the right people at the right place at the right time and having whatever process that they're doing be efficient so you don't waste costs, you don't waste people's times, but you also don't affect the quality of the product, whatever the product is.
I could make a lot of Miami jokes here, but I'm not going to. Okay.
Yes,
Because they
Miami
wouldn't.
could use a lot more industrial engineers.
We're not known. We're known for our beaches and our nightlife and our coffee and our culture. We're not known for efficiency.
No.
And that's just the way it is. You got to embrace it if you're going to live here. All right. So, did you enjoy the job of industrial engineer while you were doing it?
I did, for the most part, I enjoyed the creativity. It allowed me to do, you kind of have to think outside of the box for different projects. Um, the actual like tedious math, little details sometimes would get difficult, especially when I started having kids, because your mind needs to be completely focused and kids don't allow for that. They're the chief inefficiency officers is what my dad would call my
Oh,
daughter and my niece because
that's
I
a
worked for
very,
him. Yeah. And so I did like it. I loved the flexibility it gave me to start my family.
okay.
Absolutely. And just got a little difficult once you have 3 kids to because I wanted at that point my priorities was they're only going to be this little for that long
Yeah.
and then they're not anymore. And I had the flexibility to change how much I was working. And so I took that.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail because I want to learn more about that choice for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the education path that took you into industrial engineer. I just want to share as much or as little as you want to for the people who are listening who may not know how long you studied in higher ed to become an engineer, which is only relevant for then later making the decision to not do it.
Yeah, it was 4 years, so it was my undergrad. I
Okay.
never got a master's in anything else, which some people do with engineering, but for industrial, it was just the 4 years of college.
All right. All right. So you shared in the original pitch that you had always had a passion for writing.
Yes.
And so then if I had met you when you were younger, like 10 or 11, which is probably when you were reading those Harry Potter books, if I
Mhm.
had asked you then what you wanted to be when you grew up, what would you have said, do you think?
So it's funny because I actually I found this my first published book that I ever wrote. I was 6 years old.
Okay.
It was about my dog, and it was something that my mom had gotten that you could write it, draw a picture, and then they would produce the book for you. It's like
Yep.
bound and everything. It looks typed up what I had written. So I always say that's my first published work when
Yeah.
I was 6 years old. But so I don't think at 10 or 11 I would have said I wanted to be a writer. Just because, so I come from a family where if everyone, my aunts, uncles are engineers,
Okay.
and we were just very practical about, in the future, you need to have a job that's stable so that you can live, right? Like have
Sure.
money to buy food and a house. And so I would have loved to, I took a lot of writing classes in high school and college because they make you take electives. I took a lot of computer design classes. I enjoyed those a lot, but I don't think I would have ever pinpointed that that is what I was going to do because it was
Okay.
kind of already known that I needed a practical, and I understand that, we live in the real world where
Yeah.
you do have to pay bills.
Okay, so let's talk about that a teeny tiny bit because about the decision to pursue engineering. So what I'm hearing you saying, you can steer me back if it's not the right path, but this was sort of the family business in one hand. Like you had aunts and uncles and people who were already engineers. There were a lot of people in your family that you saw as engineers.
Yeah.
And then it also sounds like there was some messaging or influence from your family and your community to be very practical about the decisions you made of what to study and what job to select.
Yeah, yeah. And
That sounds
and it's funny because maybe at the time I didn't think it was fair, but now as a parent, I get it.
you get it
I will
right.
do the same to my kids. I want them to, be have that safety net.
Yeah. And
Although we will
so,
always be there for them, but they need to be realistic as well. But it's also funny because after having my kids, I also realized that, especially my middle son, he has Down syndrome. He kind of taught me that, sure, be practical, have a job that you can make a steady income from, but that doesn't mean you have to put your passions on a shelf, right? It's not a give
yeah.
or take, it's not a black or white thing here.
Did you ever feel, and that is the question behind the question, because did you feel when you were studying engineering and when you were in university or even in high school, did you feel that you were giving up your creative pursuits in order to study it, or was it all sort of just kind of happening at the same time?
It was all happening at the same time. Engineering doesn't really give you much time to think about things like
Yeah.
that. My first book, I actually did start writing it my sophomore year of college after I took an introduction to jazz class. So we were
Oh,
given that freedom to take some of those arts classes, which I really, really enjoyed. And so that was kind of the catalyst that started the whole, it reminded me that I loved writing.
okay.
Then engineering happened and it got kind of tough to keep it up. And it wasn't until my son was born in 2017 that I started writing advocacy articles for
Okay.
kids with Down syndrome. And it was the new catalyst that reminded me, like the spark that reminded me how much I enjoyed the creative part of my mind.
So, and I will say there's two engineers in my family. Neither one of them enjoys the electives, right? So they're the opposite. Like one
Okay.
one chose a school where they did not have to take anything other than the required classes, and the other one has just tolerated them and taken the, most, they just tolerate them. They have no patience for it, and there's no squishy sciences either. They're so I would
So
say
they're
as an
not they're not
outsider,
industrial engineers then.
right? I would say that as in the spectrum of engineers, you had a creative side because there are some, that are much more, it's like anything else.
Yeah.
There's a wide range of people.
Right, right.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed and were signing up for intro to
Oh yeah, those were
jazz,
my favorite classes. Those were they were the ones that kept me going through the other classes.
So yeah, so the writing was then on the wall. Okay, so that's how you were choosing to be engineering. Did you consider anything else? Like, were you like, would you ever consider like going to med school or being a
No,
lawyer or,
no,
you
no.
know, engineering was the only thing.
I can't, reading documents that lawyers are required to read is not my thing. And no one wants me even close to any patients
Okay.
for medicine. So,
All right, very good. So, so I have drawn a conclusion from the part of the story that I've learned so far, and I don't know if it's right. It seems to me that the timing of this career shift was definitely impacted by your parenting journey. Does that sound right?
yes, absolutely.
And I think that that's a thing that's not uncommon, honestly. I think that sometimes we feel like in 2026, we're recording this at the end of 2025, but 2026, we kind of have this idea that humans have conquered biology and we are not impacted by this cycle of raising small human beings. But it is my opinion that we have not actually done that. It was surprising to me 25 years ago when I was like, wait a minute, what? But what was it? What was happening? You hinted to this, but I'm giving you a chance to tell this. You hinted that this was a slow shift for you. Like you went from full-time work to kid one to kid two to kid three. What was going on in your parenting family journey that resulted in you eventually not going back to being an engineer?
So my husband was doing medical school
Okay.
throughout having our kids, then residency, and then finally his very long process. So I
Yes.
was again the practical part of me was like, I don't have time for writing right now. I need to work, right? We have three kids, we have a house, and for anyone who knows the journey of medicine, it's a slow one in terms of salary wise. So I was practical. I was enjoying the small articles I wrote here or there, advocating for Down syndrome or kids with special needs. But that was it. That was much time as I was allotting myself for it. Um, and then eventually he finished his course of training, 10 years. And so that was the final. I talked to him. I told him at that point, I wasn't fully happy with what I was doing at work, mostly because I didn't have the time for it with the kids and the time to have my mind completely focused on all the numbers and all the logic. And it was draining. And he's like, well, you're raising our three kids during the day. That was my full-time job, is taking the kids to school, doing homework with them. So he's like, this is a passion of yours, and he was really supportive, and I'll never be able to thank him enough for allowing me to, not allowing me, but for encouraging me to take that leap. My parents as well, because they've always been super supportive of helping us out whenever we needed. And so that whole flexibility and that support system was what finally gave me the push to say it's now or never. The final push was last year. I had back surgery.
Okay.
And I was like, what am I doing? I've been holding on to these. I had written three books by that point. I've been holding on to them because I was scared, because I thought it wasn't the right time, but there was no more excuses left, right? Like the right time happened exactly when I had my back surgery, and I was like, it was like the last aha moment. I go, I'm gonna do this.
Okay.
Why hold that? I'm never gonna know how it's gonna end or how it can go if I just don't share it at all.
All right. So that's the end. I'm going to back up to the beginning. Are you and your husband roughly the same age?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did you guys
we
talk?
met in engineering school.
Oh, so he
That
did
was the other thing.
engineering undergrad and then went to med
Yes,
school? Okay.
yes, yes,
So when you guys were dating, I want to talk about the beginning of your relationship because med school is a famously long and expensive process
yes.
that absolutely overlaps with the biological calendar for a lot of people, right? Like, so it's like
Yeah,
a really tough decision for women who want to be doctors and surgeons
yes,
and
yes.
then wives and all the things. And it doesn't always work out well, guys. It doesn't always work out well. There's a lot of stories of marriages not making it through this process. When did you guys first talk about like sort of the division of like the timing of children and who was going to pay the bills and how while he went to medical school? Like, was it something you guys planned in advance?
Yes, well, sort of, and no.
Okay.
In our minds, we planned it, but like life happens and the planning is thrown out the window and things that you didn't think were going to happen. But we're really, really fortunate that from the beginning, when we first got married, we've had a super supportive group of family and friends. We're both Latin, so we have our family always in our lives,
Yep.
which, has its little cons, but it's the best part is that support that they provide for you. So if it wasn't for them, I think our story would have gone maybe differently. I don't know. No one knows.
Right.
So I definitely am grateful for all our family and friends. But we did. We said he knew this was going to be a long road, and we both wanted kids. We both knew we wanted kids, and he was staying local for medical school. So we said, let's do it. We can always find an excuse to not. And then before you know it, we're 10 years down the road. And so we felt ready. We had the support system here and we went for it. And our first daughter, our first kid, our daughter, it went smoothly. It took our time to find our rhythm, but we finally did. And then our second child came. And that's when, you know, again, if it wasn't for our support system, I think our story may have it definitely would have been a lot more of a challenge than it was.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different versions of family today. And it is very lucky to have a big family that's engaged and everybody agrees around when you're doing that. It's very, very helpful because there are a lot of people out there who are they don't live or have family that's around to, or the family doesn't want to jump in and do those things. So that is wonderful, and I'm sure they appreciate you giving them the thanks. But so
Yeah.
you were aware. You guys talked about the time frame. You're like, this is going to take 10 years. And during that time, we're not really drawing one of those paychecks. And so you knew that was the process and you knew that going in.
Right.
And so had you talked about, I think this is funny because like everybody says talk about these things at the beginning of the relationship, but I know from my experience, I didn't know how I was going to feel about parenting and being home until I was in it. Like I could have easily had a conversation when I was 25. I'm sure I did actually, but it wouldn't have been a helpful conversation because I didn't know enough to know what I was going to care about later. And yours has the wrinkle that often catches people by surprise that you have a special needs child that you were not necessarily planning for. But did you guys like plan about, did you have a conversation? Here's the question. I'm beating around the bush here. I'll be very direct. Did you guys talk about it beforehand when you were young? And you can say no. You can be like, no, we never even thought about it. That once he got the job and was being a doctor, that you were going to opt out of the workforce. Like, did you guys talk about it in advance or no?
No, we hadn't really talked about it. We
Yeah.
kind of just took year by year,
Yeah.
surviving every year.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you met him when you were in college. When did he find out that you were writing manuscripts and stuffing them in a drawer?
I can't remember if I had ever told him about that specific manuscript because it was right in the beginning of our relationship and I might have been a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
Definitely when I picked up that manuscript again, the first book, I did tell him about it, but that was because we joke all the time. He's like, the day I knew that you needed another outlet was the day I came home. He was like in a hard rotation. He got home, I think it was like 8:30 or 9. He had been home, he had been gone since 6 in the morning. And I had all three kids because it was during COVID.
Okay.
And he found me with a bounce house inside of our house and the kids bouncing in the bounce house. And I had my one glass of wine next to me, and he looked at me and he was like, that's when I knew.
That's so you bought a bounce house and you
A
brought it
small one,
inside
but
the
yes.
little one, right? The little one that you can order on Amazon or from Target, yes, or
Yeah.
Walmart and fits inside that. Not the big one that we order for parties, but the little
No,
one that
no.
fits inside. And you brought it inside the house.
Hmm.
And you the reason you did that is that you were just tapped out and you were like,
I
y'all
needed the kid. Yeah, yeah.
get in there and get your
Hmm.
sillies out and
Yeah.
talk to me when you're ready to go to bed.
Yes.
And then when your husband came home, he saw that and he was like, she needs something else in her life.
Yeah. And we had like I just finally told him I was like I used to paint a lot, I used to write, and I kind of hadn't had the time for that between the kids and work. And he's
Yeah.
like, I got it. He kind of just took over bedtime completely and allowed me to do that.
So there's no one in my family who's gone the medical school route, but so I don't have actual personal experience with this, but I have known people who've gone through this. Was there a chance that when there's the matching that happens at the
Yes,
end?
multiple matchings
Multiple,
depending
oh,
on
okay.
what you like if you keep specializing for
Yeah.
every specialty, it's another match.
And so, which is like, it's like sorority rush, but for doctors, where you
Yeah,
make your
and
list and they
super
make their list.
stressful. Yes,
Was
yes.
there a chance that he would have, or maybe it happened to you and you had to make decisions where he would have been matched to something that was out of town and you guys had
Yes,
this
yeah.
commitment?
We knew that that was our daughter was 2. I was pregnant with my second one, 34 weeks pregnant for his match day after medical school. And there was a possible we stayed in Florida, but there was a possibility that we weren't going to be the few minutes away that we are from our families.
Okay, but it worked out. You
It
got a
worked out.
spot
It worked out.
so that's I've heard about it from a couple of people who've gone through it with spouses and children and stuff like that. And it seems like a
It's
ridiculous
wild.
barbaric
Yes.
process that should like made sense in 1945 but probably is ready for an update. But listen,
Yep.
I'm not in charge and don't know anything about what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, so no one should listen to me. All right, so very good. So I feel like this shift with parenthood in not going into an office every day is pretty common because it doesn't always fit for every profession, but it is less common, I feel, with professions like engineering and medical school and accounting because those are professions that you've trained for. It's
Right.
harder to walk away from those degrees. Sometimes for some people, not always. And to do a shift like this is a reemergence of like a creative side of you that really bubbled up. And I feel almost like this is like something that was inside you that if you had not like listened to it, it would have bubbled up at some point anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you were
absolutely.
writing, it sounds like you were, I mean, you said that by the time you actually went to do this, you had 3 full manuscripts in a drawer.
Yes. Yep.
That's a lot of words, Lisi. That's a lot of words and a lot of stories. So, like, people,
Yeah.
that's you were writing anyway, you just were not committed to it. Okay, share with us. So, you started this first manuscript when you were a sophomore in college. What style of writing is it that you do?
So the first 2 I wrote are World War II historical fictions.
Okay.
The third one I've written that's coming out this 2026 is it's a fictionalized story of my grandparents' um, story of the Cuban Revolution and coming over to
Into
the United States.
Okay, all right. That's actually that's a
So
story
it's
that okay.
historical fiction, but of the a Cuban historical fiction.
The when I asked you earlier at the beginning when I asked you about fables, I wondered it was super interesting. I was like, there is a chance that she is going to say share a fable that is has Cuban heritage, because I knew that that was your. So I was like, this could be an interesting thing. But you went with Harry Potter, and that's totally good. So historical fiction. What were you a fan of historical fiction? First of all, is it historical like romance fiction or like what are we talking about here?
One is a little bit has romance. The first one is more romance heavy. The second is just a fictional take of Glenn Miller's disappearance during World War
Okay.
II. So that one's just more historical. I mean, it has like a little romance in it,
But it's
but not as
not
much as
like
the
a
first one.
romantasy.
Right.
Okay.
No, yeah,
And
definitely not a
then the
romance.
third one that you're working on now that's coming out soon is really your family history
Family. Yeah,
or
that's more of a
origin
family
rooted.
saga mystery. Right. Yes. Yeah.
All right. It's
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
true story. It's not like a
It
documentary.
is, no, it is not the true story. It's a dual timeline sort of. So the story of the Cuban part story is very close to what my grandparents went through when they were
Yep.
deciding to leave and come over in the 60s. And then the uh, Cuban American in the 90s, which is the other dual timeline, that one's fictionalized.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Very. So they came over in the 60s. So for some of the people who are listening to this, Cuban American history is something that I had to learn when I moved to Miami because I didn't grow up here. And it's not actually, I think, a history that a lot of people outside of
No,
the Cuban American community are always very familiar with because there are waves. There are waves of emigration.
right.
And so I'm going to share what I think it is. And if I get this wrong, call me in. So the wave in the 60s was people who were emigrating before, like on their own, they were choosing to leave.
So in the 60s already, the revolution, the 60s, like 60, 61, you actually had to apply for an exit visa.
Okay. Oh, so already, so they,
Yes, already. And then you had to wait, and my grandparents had to wait a year with no job, right? So basically, once the Cuban government knew that you were leaving, they cut you off.
okay.
And they're like, figure out what you're going to do until you leave because we're not wasting any more resources or anything on you. So, yeah, so in the 60s, some people were able to leave maybe like 60, 60, but they did ground a lot of flights.
Okay. So the
And
early
if you
ones were
got
able to
one,
get
it would
out.
be like in a year, right?
Okay.
So it was already kind of shifting to the you needed to ask permission to leave.
Asked permission to leave. Then there was a wave of people who were expelled from Cuba, which is very,
Then,
very
uh-huh.
famous in the 80s. And then now we are in the wave of people who flee.
You have the Peter
Um,
Pan also,
Peter
where a
Pan,
lot of
Pedro
the
Pan, which is a
kids.
piece of history that nobody, true story. I once told somebody who is like a professor from outside of Florida, relative of mine, Uncle Bob. And I told him about the Pedro Pan story, and he's like, that's not true. And I was like, no, it is. It absolutely is. And because it didn't get a bunch of notice, I guess, in the American history books. But Pedro Pan is the story of parents in Cuba putting their children on airplanes facilitated by
Mhm.
the Catholic diocese around the world and flying them in, and they were raised by families in the United States. Some of those people were reunited with their parents. A lot were
Right.
not. I know most of the Pedro Pan people are slightly older than me. I'm 53, but I think now three people who were Pedro Pan
Yeah.
survivors.
My sister's mother-in-law was Pedro Pan. Her stories
Yeah.
are,
It's an
yeah, yeah.
it's a crazy
It's
story.
crazy. It is
It's crazy.
crazy.
And there's been movies made about it. And there's a community that at our local state school, FIU, they have an exposition that I don't know if it's permanent or it's seasonal, but they do talk about it. So that's a crazy story. Okay. So that's going to be a very interesting book. There are those kind of things. Okay. So you've written three books. In a second, we're going to do, and I got way off topic talking about Cuban
Okay,
immigration,
I
but
do that too. So we're on the same page here in terms of
it is a funny thing because super South Florida, where we live, is a very distinct region. And when immigration comes up in topics, which we're not going to talk about immigration or politics because that's not the show, but every once in a while I'll remind people, I'm like, hey. One of the things that makes South Florida very unique is a lot of the people who live here, they're exiles. Right. Like they keep it in context. Like the reason that they are here started with something that wasn't like, oh, you know what? I hear that Miami's nice this time of year, you know?
yeah,
All right. So, because that is a different thing. That is a different thing than people who are like, I'd like to retire in South Florida.
right.
Okay. So, in a minute, we're going to do the final questions. And no one should take lessons from me about immigration or Cuban American history because I'm not presenting me as an expert. In a second, we're going to do the final questions. I want to give you a chance to tell people where they can find you, like you share your website, and where people can buy your books. And this information for everybody who's in the audience will be in the description of the show and also in my email newsletter, which is the easiest way to get the links.
So yeah, so I have an Instagram, Lisi Writes. You have there, you can link, you have a link to my website, Lisi Lopez,
Yep.
author.com. And you can join up to my mailing list through there. Mailing list just kind of gives people maybe some like sneak peeks of the book I'm working on or like release dates, an early cover release also. I also have Facebook, Lisi Writes, and all those will link you back to my books that are sold on Amazon, or you can even find it. Books and Books has it online, and Barnes and Nobles as well.
All right, so Books and Books is our local indie bookstore
Yes,
here in South Florida. So that's fantastic. And I hope that you're doing all kinds of fun things and shows and stuff where people can find you. I'm going to put all that information, like I said, where people can find it. Lisi, are you ready for the final fun questions? None of which are about history or immigration or any of those things.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Name a grown-up task or responsibility that you have done because it needs to get done, but you would eagerly give up and happily never ever do it again if that was an option.
Oh, I'm in between two here. Trying to think.
You can do both. You can do both.
All
We make
right,
the
for
rules.
sure, cooking.
Okay.
is one of cooking for my family.
Okay, there you go. No,
Every
that's
day.
fine.
And
Very good.
laundry.
And laundry. Laundry is like the Sisyphean task of adulthood. It's like it just never ends, and it really
Every
is.
day. My husband's like,
Yes.
"You're doing laundry again?" I go, "Yeah, we're a family of five."
100%, 100%. Okay, so movies are in the news because the way we watch them has changed. What is the last movie that you went to watch in a theater?
Wicked for good. My
Oh, so that's pretty recent. Yeah, there you go. All
my
right. So,
daughter dragged me to that one, but it's good. So
yeah. Did
I
you
can't
like one
complain.
or two better?
I think the songs from one are better,
That's the
but
same with the
two
show.
was
Yeah.
good. Two
Yeah.
was good.
It's the same. I haven't seen the second one yet because we're saving it up for when everybody's together. Okay. Anyway,
Oh,
here we go. We are talking right before the winter gift holidays. Do you like to do your gift shopping in person or online? And can you share one of your favorite stores, either online or a bricks and mortar store?
online.
Online.
I have to because I don't
Yeah.
even have an option anymore to go.
All right. Very good. And where do you like
Online
to
for
shop
sure.
online?
I hate to say it, but Amazon. I Most of the times Amazon, maybe Walmart,
Yeah.
Target.
Yeah.
I try to do some local also, especially for I do have a boutique where I get like my mother-in-law, my mother, their gifts sometimes. But I do love, I think my favorite gifts are ones that have meaning, which is
Yeah.
kind of hard when I've been gifting for a long time to do for my siblings or my parents. Definitely, let's see. I think my favorite story of gifting was a long time ago when I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to gift my sister an orange tree.
Okay. How'd that go?
I ended up getting white flies, but they felt bad getting rid of it because it had been a gift. Until I finally was like, It's okay. You have to get rid of that."
That's so funny. Family can be really hard to buy gifts for, and parents can be impossible, just impossible, because they have everything and they can buy everything that they want, which is a wonderful reason to be hard to shop for.
Yeah.
But yes, it
My
is.
mom says she loves to know what random gift I'm gonna give them this year. I told her I kept it boring. They're just getting clothes and jewelry and
Why, this is a very old story, but I used to get my little brother presents, and when we started moving away from buying each other presents, it was because one time he looked at me and he's like, "Do you realize that you have bought me the same present for the last several years? Every year I was buying him a blue sweater." I had no idea. I had no recollection. He's like, "I like them." But he's like, they don't
just
wear out
letting
in
you
a
know.
year. There's a closet full, like the Amy
A
section. I was like, what?
blue
Oh, okay.
sweater.
Sorry about that. Should
That's
make
funny.
notes. That's it. Lisi Lopez, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on today's show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Obvi again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.